From the library of the New York Stock Exchange at the corner of Wall and Broad Streets in New York City, you're inside the Ice House, our podcast from Intercontinental Exchange on markets, leadership, and vision in global business. The dream drivers that have made the NYSE an indispensable institution of global growth for over 225 years. Each week, we feature stories of those who hatch plans, create jobs, and harness the engine of capitalism. Right here, right now at the NYSE and at ICE's exchanges and clearinghouses around the world. And now welcome inside the Ice House. Here's your host, Josh King of Intercontinental Exchange.
Missouri is home to over 6 million people. Also, 4 million cattle, 3 million pigs, and possibly one future goat. No, not a goat that roams on a farm, to which Missouri has over 74,000, but a goat on the football field. Number 15 for the Kansas City Chiefs, 3-time Super Bowl MVP Patrick Mahomes. While I still side with my 7-time Super Bowl champion Tom Brady as the greatest of all time, the GOAT, it's no secret that Mahomes and the Chiefs could one day catch my Patriots in Super Bowls 1 with 6. Our guest today, Missouri Governor Mike Parson, might have a thing or two to say about the greatest quarterback of all time debate. But one thing I know we will agree on is the state's spot at the top of the agribusiness industry. Employing over 400,000 people in agriculture, Missouri is second in the nation in total farms, behind only Texas, and in the top 10 in hay production, rice production, soybeans, cotton, and corn. Intercontinental Exchange, NYSE ticker symbol ICE, the company that I work for, is also at the forefront when it comes to crops like cotton. ICE Futures US traces its roots all the way back to the New York Cotton Exchange, established in 1870, and has since grown into physical agriculture commodity exchange that it is today. Now it offers deeply liquid benchmark contracts to trade coffee, sugar, cocoa, cotton, frozen concentrated orange juice, and canola futures. Now, the early mornings and late nights of tending to animals and working the fields is not an abstract idea to Governor Parson. A third-generation farmer himself, he understands the challenges faced in the industry and the struggles to keep the farm up and running. The father of 2 children that followed his lead, Governor Parson also knows the importance of family farms and the need to recruit a new generation of farmers. Leading the state since 2018, Governor Parson's time in Jefferson City, because of term limits set by the Missouri Constitution, is going to conclude in January 2025. But before it does, he joins us inside the Ice House to talk about the Chiefs' Super Bowl victory, Missouri's agribusiness, and the accomplishments of his time in the governor's mansion. Our conversation with Missouri Governor Mike Parson is coming up right after this.
When you think of investment risk, do you consider climate risk? Changing weather patterns are impacting the way we live and the value of businesses, large and small. This can mean disruption to supply chains, changing demand for products, and shifting regulation. What does this mean for your business, your clients, and your investments? ICE offers data and markets that can provide critical insight. Manage your climate risk with ICE.
Mike Parson assumed office as the 57th governor of Missouri on June 1st, 2018, and secured re-election on November 3rd, 2020. Governed by Missouri's term limits, he currently has less than a year remaining in the governor's mansion, situated along the Missouri River in Jefferson City. After his term concludes, the third generation of farmer will likely return 2 hours south to the town of Bolivar to oversee one of the Show Me State's almost 90,000 farms. But before he gets back to the daily business of running the 24th state in the union and then eventually tending to his land and cattle, he speaks with us now. Governor, thanks so much for joining us inside the Ice House.
Hey, great to be with you this morning, Josh. You're already talking smack about football, though, so I'm going to have to stand up for my Kansas City Chiefs,
I don't have much smack to say after the performance that Andy Reid and the team turned in. It was incredible to watch. I've got a lot of good friends in Missouri who, in my time watching the Patriots' slow decline, I've been texting every Sunday because they're such an entertaining crew. I just want to start with the State of the State address, sir, that you gave last month. You said, I'm going to quote you, "Well, the view from the dais is a fine sight to see. It's no comparison to that Polk County farm behind the windshield of my John Deere tractor." Now, Governor, John Deere is listed here under ticker symbol DE, a staple on most, if not all, of the country's almost 2 million farms. Despite the well-deserved respite coming your way 6 months as governor, is that bug towards more years of public service still there, or are you ready to get back to the farm?
No, you know what? It's probably not. I want to go home. I think there's a time when all of us need to go home. To be right honest about it, I got 6 grandkids, a great-grandchild I had 7 months ago. I want to spend a little bit of time on the farm, do a lot of things I've been missed doing, and spend some time with the family. But, it's been a great ride. I mean, I have no regrets of everything I've done, and I've been so blessed in my life to get to do the things I've done. But I'm looking forward to it. I met some great friends and been able to move the state forward. And I think when it's all done, we'll be so proud of that. What we've done in the state when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to businesses, when it comes to workforce infrastructure. Those are things that have never been done at the level we've done here in St. Missouri. So, I'm going to be proud of that, but I'm going to ride off in the sunset for a better terms.
Before you do, you took part in the Kansas City Chiefs Super Bowl parade a couple of days ago, and one thing I think you'll miss when you leave office in January are the Super Bowl wins that have become so common over the last couple of years. I mentioned earlier Coach Reed, quarterback Mahomes, leading the Chiefs to their 3rd Lombardi trophy in the last 5 years, all during your time of office. What's the chatter been around Missouri now that a dynasty has finally been cemented in Kansas City?
Well, I think, as you mentioned earlier, as being a Patriot fan, the Patriots have always had this kind of separate league of their own, the dynasty that has. And I think the ones really chasing that dynasty right now is the Kansas City Chiefs. When you got Coach Reed, you got Mahomes, you got our players that we've got. But the organization as a whole, the Hunt family, what they've done for the NFL over the years, Arrowhead being one of the last original stadiums that are there. It's a great venue to play in. But I've been a Chiefs fan for 50 years, so I know the highs and lows of being a true fan. But for me as governor, I've been governor 6 years. So we've been in the AFC Championship game 6 years in a row. We've been to the Super Bowl 4 times. We've won 3 out of 4. We won the 57th Super Bowl last year, which I'm the 57th governor, so that's pretty special for me to be able to do that. And look, there's no signs of turning back here. I think they are going to continue to be a good team. And Mahomes, a young guy, just super talented. So I just think they got the organization, the right people. I don't think we're done winning Super Bowls yet, but it's going to be fun. We're going to have a target on our back for sure.
The celebration overshadowed, of course, Governor, by a tragic shooting. We're still getting information gathered about the circumstances of the shooting, but could you give us a little bit of insight into some of the acts that you saw sort of in a crisis situation unfold with your first responders and parade attendees who prioritize the safety and attendance of others as something completely unexpected happened at a moment that was supposed to be so celebratory?
Sure. Well, it was a sad day to end the wedding for a wonderful celebration, over 1 million people there. First time anything like this has happened in our state of this magnitude. So it was a little bit of shock for all of us for that to happen at that venue. But I will say this. First of all, I got to say, our prayers go out to the victims that were involved in that. It was strictly innocent bystanders that just happened to get caught in the middle of a gunfight. For better terms. And I think when you've seen how law enforcement, we were right there pretty close where the gunshots were fired, to see the response of law enforcement, emergency personnel, you couldn't ask for any more out of them. They run towards the suspects. They were apprehended. People helped apprehend people. And it was just, for a terrible event, everybody did it as much as they could. Try to save lives and get bad people off the street. So, it's just a shame it ended that way. It's just, like I said, it was just a wonderful, positive day until that happened. And again, just people that have no respect for anyone other than themselves. And the lady that lost her life, she was a Hispanic DJ in Kansas City, well thought of, and just absolutely, at a place just caught random gunshots, all the rest of it. So it's a shame, but we got to start dealing. We got to start figuring out how to get everything back in order. We got to move on because Kansas City's too good a city and Missouri's too good a state to let this taint for 4 years to come.
I'm always curious, Governor, about the the work that people do before they're called to higher office and how they prepare for those offices and think about the opportunity to lead when it comes. You served 13 years in state government in Missouri's House of Representatives and its Senate, and then from January 2017 to June of 2018 as lieutenant governor of the state. How did those experiences inform and prepare you for ultimately becoming the chief executive of the state?
I don't think there's any question, especially where it was in life. I do think it makes a difference. I've got a little years of experience on me being in these positions that we're in up here, and then the way it all turned out to end up being governor someday. I didn't come up here until I was probably in the 50s before I come up here. So I had a lot of life's experience being a sheriff, being a farmer, been in business before. So I kind of knew that side of it. But I think understanding how the system works, and what was a great opportunity is the way I come into office because our former governor resigned. It wasn't like he was on a campaign trail and promised anybody anything. You literally got to walk in from day one and say, hey, here's the direction we're going to go. And we're going to make infrastructure and workforce development the main issues of this entire administration. We're not going to change them. We're going to stay in these guardrails. And that's exactly what we've done. And it's been one of the most successful things we've had in our state in a long time. But again, I think the thing governors sometimes make a mistake. They try to get too many priorities, and then all of a sudden nothing's wrong. So we've really just stayed focused on workforce development and infrastructure, and they've both paid off for us. And we're talking about agriculture. I kind of sometimes take that for a given because I'm a farmer, my dad and mom are farmer, my grandparents are farmer. But I also understand the importance of agriculture. I can understand where it was and where it is today and where it's going. And it's like anything, you've got to adapt to technology. Agriculture changing at a very fast pace. And we got to be prepared for that. So, experience matters in this job. And I think that's what's helped me get through this for 5.5 years I've been governor.
So for 5.5 years, you've been watching also some of the big companies in your state thrive that are doing operations well beyond the state borders. Missouri, home to several companies listed on the New York Stock Exchange, Governor, including Anheuser-Busch, ticker symbol BUD, H&R Block, ticker symbol HRB, Emerson Electric, EMR, and the Reinsurance Group of America, RGA, among so many others. With over 20 such New York Stock Exchange listed companies located across the state, how have you as governor strategically promoted the state to retain and attract large corporations and foster the economic growth and stability that comes with that?
Well, just what you mentioned right there. When I go overseas and we start selling our trade, we talk about these companies being here. People want to go where actually work is being done, where technology is playing a part, where cutting edge. When you look at just some of the ones you mentioned, and I would also mention Danforth Plant Science. There's more scientists in agriculture, plant scientists than anywhere in the world is in St. Louis, Missouri. So when you think about what we have in that arena, people are always looking to see how to advance and how to move forward. And I think, again, when we talk about workforce, you got to be willing to train people for the workforce of tomorrow. And I think that's why we're second in the United States for apprenticeships. We're fourth in the United States for manufacturing. Things that we're doing to make sure we're preparing people for these businesses. And when you mentioned all those businesses you just did, we're now trying to start programs in high schools to let high school students know who these businesses are. Because when you're in school, you normally don't think you're going to work for Bayer or you're going to work for maybe Danforth Plant Scientists. Those are normally not normal things. But we got to do a better job selling it, and we have, and I think that's been very successful. Where now the companies are starting to go into schools and recruit high school students. That's how competitive it is, state, which is a good thing to have.
Given the dependence that the state has on agribusiness, you were mentioning it earlier, I want to address trends that are happening in the sector more broadly. The recent release of the U.S. Department of Agriculture census results revealed a nationwide decrease, Governor, with over 140,000 farms and 20 million acres of farmland lost over the last 5 years between 2017 and 2022. What factors do you think most contribute to this decline on a national scale?
Well, I think one of the big factors you got to look at, people are leaving the urban areas and they're going out in the suburbs and they're starting to spread more and more into agriculture land. People are wanting to go to those rural settings. So a lot of people are developing out in those areas. But I also think it's important when we talk about that, you also have to talk about what the production is. So if you look at that stat and say, okay, we're losing farms across the United States, but like for Missouri, for example, we're doing $4 billion more in production with what we have. So what that tells you is that we're doing a better job of taking care of the land that we have and, making it more productive. And a lot of that's due to technology, research, science, the things we're doing to be better producers. I mean, the reality of it is I can't farm like my grandpa did and my dad did. You just can't do it. I mean, you've got to be better stewards of the land than we've ever been. And we've got to make sure we get the production because it is a business. It is one of those small businesses we're talking about.
You mentioned the work that your grandfather and father did. What did Granddad tell you with a young Mike Parson on his lap about sort of what it was like in his generation?
Yeah, well, my dad and mom were sharecroppers when I grew up. They worked for other people, traveled from farm to farm, using other people's equipment and helping them. As we finally got our own farm later on in life, my dad and mom did. And I realized everything they had, I wanted to have a little better. To be right honest, I wanted to be a better operator. And not to say my mom and dad are happy the way they live, but the reality is you can't deal with the things. You can't go out there on a 2-by plow and pull out into the field and think you're going to be productive, going back and forth in the field for days when you can do it now in half a day. I think when you look at tractors, it always, my dad had an old tractor, nobody had cabs back when I grew up and everything. And now when you get into the tractor, you guys have some idea how technology works. Because you're going to have codes going up. You're going to have all kinds of things that come up. But you just got to be a better operator. And I think for us, it's how much more production can you get out of the land without harming the land? And then how do you make sure you get it to the markets in a way that's profitable for farmers? And I think for the biggest challenge, I would say farmers have in the and I'm going to say most face the same issue. How do you get the next generations in the business of farming? It is difficult to do. It's expensive. And if you don't have some sort of help some way, it makes it difficult for the future. So I think that's got to be one of the priorities. We've tried to make that a priority in the state when it comes to helping young farmers to achieve the equipment they need, buy the land they need to be a good farmer.
Yeah, so there was a survey in 2022 by the National Young Farmers Coalition. It showed that 59% of young farmers think that acquiring affordable land to buy is very or extremely challenging. So let's geek out a little bit. I mean, these issues cold. How do you overcome this big obstacle of, someone graduates in agricultural science from University of Missouri, wants to become a farmer instead of working for a big corporation? Like, how do we get them the first 100 acres that they're going to need to till?
Yeah, well, the reality is probably most of them going to have to work in the private sector to be able to afford buying a farm just from scratch. Or you've got to have family members that can help them get started in that. Farming is nothing new to the financial, industry as a whole. I think we all know that farming can be risky. And it's very difficult to get loans for a young person to be a farmer, especially if you're talking about whether it's cattle or whether it's row crops, pork, whatever it is. If you went to the bank today as a young man who just got out of college, as you said, out of the MU, and you said, okay, I want to borrow the money to buy all the equipment, buy all the land, and buy all the product that I'm going to buy, whether that's livestock or whether that's row crops. The chance of them even come close to being qualified for a bank loan for you, it's not. So there's ways that we're trying to, in the state of Missouri, we're trying to help kind of ensure that loan from the state level to maybe not the banks not have so much risk in it all by themselves. So I think there's ways you can help that younger generation to be able to do that. And then, it's got to be profitable. I mean, it's business. It's big business in our state. Some of the companies you named earlier, when you hear those names, them are all household names to a certain degree. And sometimes we think agriculture is out here by itself. But agriculture is the biggest business in our state. There may be a lot of us farmers out there, but, you got to remember whatever we're doing for businesses, we need to be doing the same thing for agriculture that helps them to be able for the future of agriculture.
There was a release this week of the agricultural census at the federal level. Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack noted that, I'm going to quote Secretary Vilsack here, the majority of farmers in the country require off-farm income in addition to their farm income just to keep everything running. Are there ways to make the farms, not the farmers, capable of creating multiple revenue streams beyond what the land has traditionally yielded?
It's difficult. It's difficult to get somebody, like I said, just going there without any kind of land to start with, parents or grandparents or somebody to help you along. It's pretty difficult to do that. I'm not saying you can't do it, but I'm telling you, it's going to be a tough old way to go. And then I think the other thing in agriculture, and I think us farmers know that, every year there's no consistency in your revenues or your expenses. I mean, like we've been facing 2 droughts here in the state of Missouri for the last 2 years. We farm over 400 acres, put about 3,000 bales of hay as a normal rule. But now you're talking about putting up 40% of that. So it costs you just as much to run over that land, but yet the profit margin you're selling for is definitely drastically lower. And I think that's so much the uncertainty of farming that you got to have people understand that when they give you loans and when you go to those type of businesses to get that. But we're trying to sell that. We're trying to sell that to the financial institutions too.
We talked a little bit earlier about John Deere. There's another New York Stock Exchange listed company called Lindsay Corporation that makes those massive irrigation systems that create those huge circles on the land that you see as you fly over states like Missouri. And you think about Deere and Lindsay and the amount of technology. You mentioned it earlier that they're starting to employ artificial intelligence, understanding, the composition of particular soil, the amount of rain that they get. For our listeners who, benefit from listening to both a governor and a farmer at the same time, share with us where you see some technology really coming to bear in our agricultural industry that will address some of these issues.
Yeah, I think to your listening audience, I think people think you got the cap on, it's dirty, you got overalls on, and things are, this farmers are kind of rugged and rough. But I tell you, if you get a new combine today, what that new combine will cost you. But it's like getting an airplane cockpit. I mean, there's more gauges, there's more instruments. They're all set up to make life easier for you as a farmer. Matter of fact, you don't even drive them. They're GPS driven. So where farmers are basically sitting there, seeing what the moisture of that product is, when that bin's going to be full. And the other thing I think that is so important is why in this state, you're up billions of dollars in production. They've got these set up now where you don't even stop to unload the grain. You're literally going down the field, somebody pull up beside you, and you're unloading the grain and keep going. And that's all technology driven to be able to do that. I would encourage your listening audience today. I know you got a huge audience listening to you, but maybe sometime if they ever had a chance, go to a farm show, go to a state fair, and get up in some of that equipment today and see what that's like inside that thing. And I think you'll be totally surprised with what's been carried in those machines.
Shifting away from the farm, Governor, I want to go back to some of the things you mentioned about what the State of the State address represented in terms of you setting enough priorities to demonstrate real progress, but not too many that you get lost in what you're trying to do. The repair of Missouri's roads and bridges has been a focus of yours during your time in office. Think about your administration. What's been done to respond to the needs that you saw as you drove across the state's roads and highways to modernize a few of Missouri's biggest pieces of infrastructure like 270 North, the Buck O'Neill Bridge, and the Roach Point Port Bridge?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's a question. We made infrastructure a priority. And let me just say this, infrastructure definitely is highway, bridges, rail, ports, river ports, but it's also broadband. And broadband has been a huge issue to us in our state. But when we set out to do I-70, for example, we're probably the first state in the United States that has 6 lanes going across our state from I-70, across our state. Because the one thing you have to understand, if you're going to bring businesses here, which we brought $15 billion worth of new business to our state in the 5.5 years I've been here, over 100,000 new employees. But all of that comes down to when people look to invest in your state, they want to know, what are you doing for infrastructure? What are you doing to improve to get our products in and out? How are you going to help us be profitable businesses? And then what are you doing for the worker? Where am I going to be able to hire somebody to work in my company that has the skills they need to be a good business partner? I think we have absolutely made those two things a priority to be able to do that. I think when we had the merger, just to name a couple of things, I mentioned I-70 and 6 lanes all across our state. People never thought that would ever happen. We were able to do it by some, I guess, being articulate and how we come up with financing. Kansas City Southern Rail merged with Canadian Pacific in Canada a couple of years ago. So that is the first time in North America that we will have continuous rail from Canada to Mexico, and the headquarters are in Kansas City, Missouri. Those are the those are the things that make a difference for people coming to your state, especially over in European countries and countries that are used to rivers and rail. Those are the kind of things they want to see you doing. So I think all the combination, all of the above, making some of the largest investments in broadband. We really believe in 5 years from now, everybody in the state will have quality broadband in our state. And that's a big deal for us.
You talk about the major projects, you talk about broadband, you talk about the linking Canada and Mexico with its hub in Kansas City, but some of these major pieces of infrastructure have to get balanced. We're part of what I think you call the Focus on Bridges program. How do you balance those big deals with a lot of the smaller undertakings, but obviously greater in number of cities and towns that are off the 270 corridor?
Yeah, well, I think that is the balance now. And that's probably because I grew up in a little town with 356 people that I understand what small Missouri is all about, what rural Missouri is all about. Missouri has the 7th largest highway system in America. And we've already did half of our roads in Missouri. We've already redone that in 5.5 years. But that includes weather. Yeah, I-70 is going to get the attention, Buffalo Nail Bridge, I-270. But we did over half the lettered roads in the state, which is rural areas. That's where your row crops, where your farmers are at, to be able to do that. We put bridges. We put now probably bridges that had never ever imagined being done in these areas in rural Missouri. So you have to have a plan in place to realize Missouri is very diverse. So you've got to be able to take care of all the populations in your bigger cities and your main roads. But those other side roads to rural Missouri are just as important to those people as it is for Kansas City or St. Louis or Columbia. And you have to balance it. I mean, it's not easy because sometimes people think we're taking away from us or all that. But I'm telling you, what we did is to make sure everybody gets a piece of pie. And that's what we've done. It's been successful.
So during your administration, I think you've seen your unemployment rate as low as 2.1%. If you added it all up, you've added about 110,000 jobs to Missouri's economy during your tenure, with the state's prioritization of, as you mentioned earlier, apprenticeships playing a big part in that. What other initiatives and efforts has your administration spearheaded to assist those without college degrees in getting the technical skills and certifications that they need to get good paying jobs and empower them to get their own versions of the American dream, if perhaps it wasn't through a formal college degree or higher education?
Well, I think one of the important challenges that we had, I met with universities, colleges, and some of the high schools, basically making sure high school kids understand you don't have to go to college. Maybe all of you are not meant to go to college, but you are going to need a set of skills. You are going to need to go to training centers, to workforce development centers that we've set up all across the state. So we now almost have those centers in every county in our state for those very people to go to and say, what's out there for me? Because the days when you used to think, I guess for better terms, you go out there and you think maybe working maintenance is not all that glamorous a job. But today that may be a $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 job to a high school kid getting them on the floor of that. A manufacturing company, we're 4th in the United States now for those. But really trying to tell high school kids, you have alternatives and you have choices. If we can get you in these centers, we know that we can move forward with your education. And then you can always continue your education if you want to go back there. But it's really been a priority of ours to make sure what we want is as many people in the workforce as we can possibly get them as soon as we can now. And we just understand how that works. We're not much different in other states, but like 60% of people in Missouri do not have college degrees. And I don't say that bad about the state. And everybody says, oh my gosh, but most states are the same way. You have people that go into the workforce that help the everyday people all the time. It's just a matter of fact, I think we probably highlighted as much as we should have. So that's one of the things we're trying to do.
From my time working for a 2-term president, when you get to the final 365 days of office holder's term in office, you get a little nostalgic, wistful. You begin to think that you wake up and have your coffee and eggs and, you have one less day in the seat in the governor's mansion in Jefferson City. How are you looking to maximize those final 350 days or so?
Yeah, I've just been so fortunate. You well know, because you was part of one of those teams one time. I've got some great people that work around me every day that are dedicated to people of the state of Missouri. Couldn't be more proud of that. And I'll be honest with you, we're full steam ahead. I'm not a guy that wants to sit around too much and gloat about anything or look at all the victories. For me, it's about working until the end of this year, and that's what I want to do, continue to do what we started. There's going to be a solid foundation for the next governor when they come into this state. They're also going to have a $2 billion surplus when I leave, and very seldom does that ever happen in the States. But that's kind of the way we roll here and the way I do business. And again, we're going to keep working every day till the last.
It's nice to leave a successor with a surplus, certainly, sir. But when your term ends, I think you're going to leave office at an age that aligns with the retirement age of most Americans. But by Washington standards, if you look at the two folks vying for another term in the White House, you'll be relatively young. I mean, given this, do you think it's time for American politics to transition to leadership to the next generation of politicians and thought leaders? What would you like to see in Washington in terms of the people representing the people as a whole?
I would. I'd like to see Washington, D.C. is go back to where our forefathers started many, many years ago before we messed it up so bad. There's no reason to be so divisive in Washington, D.C. You worked for President Clinton, I believe. If I remember right, you worked for President. You had Gingrich was the Speaker of the House, and they worked together all the time on multiple things. There's no reason we can't find common grounds, just like we did in the state. Infrastructure and workforce development is not a Republican or Democrat issue. Find the things you can agree on and get them done. But it seems like in that world up there today, it's just so divided. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure how they fix it. I hope they figure it out some way, because we live in one of the greatest countries in the world. I told you earlier, and I'll stay on the presidential age, I guess I will say, but I told you in the beginning, I'm 68 years old. I think there's time to go home. There's another generation coming. And I think for me, you got to understand that. And I started this adventure up here when I was about 50. I'm not sure you don't have to lead that next generation coming in, but that's my question.
Well, Governor, I distinctly remember in my time one trip to St. Louis with President Clinton, Congressman Gephardt, so many members of the Missouri delegation riding what was then a brand new rapid transit system through the city to show off infrastructure at the time. I've had many great visits there, and we've enjoyed your visit here inside the Ice House with us. Wish you all the best in your final year of office, and wherever your journey takes you after that, back to the farm or maybe to clean up some of those problems that you've just talked about. Appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you very much, John. Thanks for having me on.
And that's our conversation for this week. Our guest was Missouri Governor Mike Parson. If you like what you heard, please rate us on iTunes and Apple Podcasts so other folks know where to find us. If you've got a comment or a question you'd like one of our experts to tackle on a future show, make sure to leave us a review. Email us at icehouse@ice.com or tweet at us at IceHousePodcast. Our show is produced by Lance Glynn with production assistance, editing and engineering from Ken Abel. Pete Ash is the Director of Programming and Production at ICE, and I'm Josh King, your host, signing off from the Library of the New York Stock Exchange. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Information contained in this podcast was obtained in part from publicly available sources and not independently verified. Neither ICE nor its affiliates make any representations or warranties, express or implied, as to the accuracy or completeness of the information, and do not sponsor, approve, or endorse any of the content herein, all of which is presented solely for informational and educational purposes. Nothing herein constitutes an offer to sell, a solicitation of an offer to buy any security, or a recommendation of any security or trading practice. Some portions of the preceding conversation may have been edited for the purpose of length or clarity.